When corrupt cops finally face the courtroom, sometimes the verdict is swift and unforgiving. Here are some shocking moments when evil cops were instantly brought down in court, showing that justice is always watching. First, we see a cop whose misdeeds come back to haunt him and a courtroom showdown that ends his career. In 2017, a series of troubling events unfolded about Sheriff James Lujan's assistance to a friend and former city councilor, Phil Chacon, in his attempt to escape law enforcement during a police pursuit. The officers arrived at the facility to take Sheriff Lujan into custody.
Snap up on the front. Towards the phone. Hold it. Hold here. Snap going front.
Morning, sir. Executing search warrant. Sheriff Lujan.
A search warrant for him or?
For the building as well.
For what?
I have no idea. It's house. But no, just stay here. No, I can't have you enter the scene.
You guys are fucked up, man.
Why are they beating on things?
You guys want to put him?
Let's get him on the opposite side of this truck.
Let's go over here, sir.
Cody?
Let's go on the
I can't
opposite
tell.
side.
Sir, let's walk over here.
Why is that? That's messed up.
Let's
Dude.
walk over here.
Sure. That's what I'm saying. Let's get him on the opposite side of this truck.
Well, you got Tabitha over there.
Right here,
Right, yeah. I got the press out here taking pictures of me in handcuffs.
The sheriff was shocked by the circumstances and felt he had too much right to be the target of a search like this. To get him to cooperate with the search, deputies had to use their authority.
Push him around into the doorway. Yeah, push him around into the doorway. At least to the doorway.
Just right here. Don't go inside.
This is ridiculous.
Keep them up there.
Hold on, we have press.
Keep them up there.
Come over here, sir.
Keep them up there.
Sheriff,
Let's go.
What are you doing?
Stay out here.
Ah, Jesus. Really?
You don't have to.
Look
just
here,
stand.
look behind
just
you.
stand. Just stand.
Stand up, bro. Stand up.
Put him on this side of the truck. Put him on the outside of the truck.
It hurts.
They're loose, sir. They're loose.
No, they're not loose.
They're not even.
Sheriff, those are loose.
So I'm going to read a stipulation.
Can you take these handcuffs off? They hurt. They hurt. Am I under arrest?
You're being detained.
Well, yeah. Why do I have to have cuffs on? They hurt.
The sheriff was advised by the deputies that he was the subject of an active search warrant. When the sheriff realized how serious the issue was, he refused to cooperate and insisted on speaking with his lawyer before taking any more action.
521 units, make sure you guys stay running hot.
So on this is signed by a district court judge, okay? Judge Bowman, okay? First Judicial. Okay. So this search warrant gives me the authorization to seize your phone, okay? Search your phone,
Okay.
but it also gives me the authorization. So what I'm asking for you to do is unlock your phone, unlock it, give it back to me, and I'm going to remove the security settings. I don't want your passcode. I'm not asking for your passcode. I'm asking you to unlock the phone. For the search warrant, you can read it if you want under number 2.
I will if I get a chance to talk to my attorney.
It doesn't work like that.
Marty,
This is not a negotiation.
get off.
This is not a negotiation, Sheriff. This is not a negotiation.
Given how many warrants he probably handled in his career, it is astonishing that a sheriff would not know how a warrant works. He refused to comply with the deputy's request, which resulted in his arrest.
You can talk to your attorney when this is all
I've been
done.
asking.
When this is all done, you can call your attorney. But right now, we're trying to get you to comply with the warrant. The warrant stipulates exactly what we want. You give us that, you get the phone, we're out of here. That's it. What do you want to do, Sheriff?
Right now, I'm under arrest.
You're
Because
detained.
I am under arrest. I am in handcuffs. I'm not free to leave. I'm not free to leave? Am I free to leave?
No.
Then if I'm under arrest, I have a right to an attorney, correct?
You do.
Okay.
And I'm not questioning you.
I'm invoking my
telling-
right to
I'm
an attorney
telling-
right now.
Okay.
Do you understand that?
So take him in.
Book me for
Book him. For obstruction. Obstruction.
book it. I'm not obstructing.
Take him over here to our unit. Take him over here to our unit.
Over here, Sheriff. Over here.
Sure.
Just
They're gonna book me.
really
Look at this shit. Look.
stop. Stop. Just walk over. Just walk. What are you doing?
The sheriff faced public humiliation right outside of his own office. Instead of giving up his phone to the officers, he chose to be handcuffed.
I'm telling you what the warrant stipulates.
I understand that. And
I told you what the warrant stipulates. You had every opportunity to cooperate. You want to cooperate, you're going to jail. Have a seat, sir.
Alright, good. Why is already
You've been
Take the whole
searched,
thing
really?
off. No, I haven't been searched. Just take
step
me
out
so we
here.
can do it.
I just want to make sure you don't have any knives.
I don't have any knives. I don't have any weapons. That's my wallet.
That's your wallet. What's it?
My keys to my truck. I don't have any weapons. Okay? I really don't. You took my weapon. As a matter of fact, you left it on the back of my truck over there. Did you get somebody to secure it,
We'll
please?
secure everything for you. Have a seat.
Can you move these to the front?
No, sir. Against department policy. Have a seat.
Well, it's tighter than hell. They hurt.
Sheriff, those are very, very loose.
Really?
Step out. Let me see if I can fix them. They're very, very loose.
His arrest was not taken lightly by the sheriff's colleagues, who started threatening the Santa Fe deputies. Tensions between the two departments were only heightened by the fact that they were arresting their own sheriff while on Rio Arriba territory.
That's his mag, and then we're gonna get you his sidearm.
Get everything. I don't want part of it.
What do you mean everything?
Everything.
So this is what we took off this person? You're the one that took it off this person? Took it off this person. Deputy Graves.
Well, inventory before you get it.
We're handing it right over to you.
Inventory. Can't get away from me. Look what you guys are doing.
We're trying to do everything peacefully. We tried to. Okay? That's all we're doing. We're done here. We're leaving.
Okay, well, get out of here then. You're done. Get out.
We'll
No.
leave when we're ready.
You said you were done.
Yeah, we're wrapping it up right now. You know how it goes. You know how it goes. We're doing our law enforcement duties. That's it. District court signed it. That's it.
Okay.
Okay, so as soon as we're done, we're gonna get out of your hair. Why are you calling everybody here to put
This
them
is
in
our
bonds?
house.
Well, right now it's ours. Right now it's ours.
Oh, wow.
We own the building right now.
Shut up.
Don't talk to me like
Go
that.
over there. Shut up.
I don't work for you. Don't
Okay,
talk to me like
shut
that.
up.
Easy, go over there. Get that and let's go. Are we done in there? Are we done in there? Okay.
The sheriff was taken straight to the police station for further questioning by the deputies, who refused to back down despite the mounting pressure.
I have no idea, sir.
You find out from?
You go ask her. Well, this is your house. You go ask her.
Oh, no, it's my house.
Yeah, it is now. Because we just gave it back to you.
Ah, this thing's hurt. God.
The sheriff was ultimately accused of 2 felonies, helping a victim and intimidating a victim. When the case went to trial, the judge gave a harsh verdict, holding the corrupt sheriff completely responsible for his deeds.
The people of Rio Arriba County elected you to be sheriff. They put their trust in you to uphold the law, and you let them down.
Yes, Your Honor, I try to do the best that I can to help everybody I can, and I in no way would want to.
The law is the law. You are not above the law, nor can you ignore the law when it serves your purpose. The sentences will be served consecutively for a total of 4.5 years, of which 3 years of imprisonment and 1.5 years supervised probation. You let down the people of Rio Grande County, and you let down the Sheriff's Department, the department that you led. What kind of example were you giving the people that you supervise?
He resigned as sheriff 1 day after being found guilty and was sentenced to a 3-year jail sentence. This next officer did not care about his actions, even in the presence of an 8-year-old.
It's the jury having found you guilty of the offense of manslaughter and assessed this punishment.
Dean was initially charged with the murder of Jefferson. However, the judge told the jury that they might also consider a manslaughter conviction prior to the panel's deliberation. A manslaughter conviction in Texas can result in a maximum sentence of 20 years in jail.
Verdict reads, we the jury, having found the defendant Aaron York Dean guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the offense of manslaughter, assess his punishment at confinement in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for 11 years, 10 months, 12 days. They do not assess a fine. And it is signed by the presiding juror. You may be seated. Thank you very much. Members of the jury, as we went through before, I'm going to call your juror number and ask you if this verdict is your individual verdict. Juror number 1, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 3, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 4, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 6, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 9, is this your verdict? Juror number 14, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 15, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 21, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 31, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Juror number 32, is this your verdict? Juror number 37, is this your verdict? Juror number 38, is this your verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Your verdict will be received and filed. Thank you very much.
The main question at trial was whether Dean knew Jefferson was carrying a weapon. In his testimony, Dean claimed to have seen her weapon, but the prosecution said that the evidence did not support this claim.
It's the jury having found you guilty of the offense of manslaughter and assessed this punishment. It's the order of the court you be remanded to the custody of the sheriff, be delivered to the director of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice to serve your sentence as required by law. You will receive credit for all the time that you have served in custody on this case from the date of your original arrest up until today, which would be the date of sentence. You have the right to appeal the jury's decision. You do so by giving written notice of appeal to the Second Court of Appeals here in Fort Worth within 30 days. If you are indigent and cannot afford a lawyer, I would conduct an indigency hearing to determine if you are indigent. And if you are indigent, I would appoint a lawyer to represent you on appeal and provide you a record of this appeal of this trial at no cost. Mr. Gill, Mr. Brissett, y'all will remain on his case pending his decision whether he wishes to appeal, and if he'll furnish the information for the trial court certification of appeal before you leave here today, I would appreciate it. Is there an allocution? You may be seated. Thank you very much.
The cop received a sentence of over 12 years in jail after being found guilty of manslaughter. Later on, a $3.5 million settlement was also approved for the boy who saw his aunt getting shot to death through her home's window. The saga of evil cops just doesn't end here. This next officer didn't hesitate to shoot a schizophrenic patient. On January 15th, 2020, employees at an AT&T shop on Main Avenue reported a client yelling at workers and brandishing a knife, prompting Norwalk police to come to the scene. When he was asked to leave, the man tried to take a cell phone, but the clerk was able to get it back from him. Solomon, the suspect, reportedly called for a ride-sharing service, argued with the driver, and then slapped him. When the driver got out of the vehicle, Solomon stole the car, and that's when the police initiated the pursuit.
Visual left off 43.
Get out of the car! Get out of the car! to taser! Taser! He's got a knife! Drop the knife! Drop the knife!
Suleiman was chased by state police on I-95 North from Norwalk into West Haven, where he collided with multiple cars and police cruisers. When he pulled onto the exit 43 ramp and stopped under the Campbell Avenue Bridge, the chase came to an end.
It's out of his hands, it's on his lap. I got the knife. It's on the hood. Pull him out. Go to taser! Taser!
While the police officer yelled orders, a trooper smashed the car's window and retrieved the knife. From another angle, it becomes clear what the trooper did next, an action that will leave you in complete shock.
Got a knife! Drop the knife! Drop the knife! I got the knife! It's on the hood! Pull him out!
According to Trooper Brian North, he fired to defend other police officers. However, the state's inspector general concluded that the gunshot wound was not justified. Brian's trial started on March 4th, and here is what happened in the trial. When North testified on March 8th, 2024, he said in his testimony that he shot Suleiman because he thought that the lives of fellow officers were at risk. What is interesting is the fact that this cop thought that a group of armed police officers could be harmed by a 19-year-old with a knife.
Now, sir, you were asked a series of questions about you firing your weapon in this towards Mr. Suleiman. Please describe again why you fired your weapon that day.
It was to protect the West Haven officer and Trooper Jackson from the threat of imminent death or serious physical injury.
And you were just shown a series of still photographs that included Trooper Jackson's body-worn camera. You recall seeing those?
Yes.
And again, your decision to use force the way you did was based on what?
It was based on what I was perceiving at the time.
During the trial, the lawyers kept delving deeper into the circumstances surrounding Suleiman's death, relying on video footage and police department testimony for further examination.
Who was in charge?
There was no one person in charge.
And who made the decision to break the passenger side window?
It was a West Haven officer, Officer Rappa.
Did that decision change the overall situation?
Yes, once the glass of the window was broken, Mr. Suleiman, it startled him, and the situation, he rapidly escalated it.
Prior to the breaking of that window, what was Mr. Suleiman's state?
He appeared to be unconscious and unresponsive.
We watched a video of you interacting with Trooper Richter and Sergeant Kiley. Do you recall that?
Yes.
The prosecution argued that North's early remarks after the shooting were contradictory, as the officer ordered Suleiman to drop the knife completely, ignoring the fact that he shot Suleiman 7 times.
So we're not trained to reassess after each shot. We're trained to reassess after each use of force, which would be an engagement. So that brief series of shots you would then reassess after that.
And Attorney Devlin had asked you, if I'm quoting correctly, did you fire as many times as you wanted to? My question is, how many times did you want to?
There was no number. It was just whatever I thought was necessary to stop the threat at hand.
And then you use the term reassess. At what point would then you have the ability to reassess?
Immediately following shots being fired.
You were asked questions about the fact that you shot through glass, correct?
Correct.
What impact does firing a weapon when shot through glass have on the shot?
Objection, no foundation.
The cop clearly replied that he isn't trained to assess the situation after shooting. He also explained that his response was influenced by the information given to them that Suleiman was armed and involved in a carjacking.
That if that West Haven officer was not going through that window, but was standing outside as is shown in the video, it would not be objectively reasonable to shoot that gun at Suleiman, right?
Objection, Your Honor, that's speculation.
He's asking, he had him read the state police criteria there, and I'm asking him if no one's going into that car, it's objectively unreasonable to shoot the driver.
Can we just do it one step at a time?
Sure.
When the officer asked him if using the gun was an objectively reasonable response given the situation, the officer remained silent. He was unable to defend the use of deadly force above de-escalation.
Is he guilty or not guilty of the lesser included offense of criminally negligent homicide in violation of Connecticut General Statutes 53A, 55, with which he stands charged?
Not guilty.
Does the court accept this verdict?
Yes.
The jury may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please listen to your verdict as it is accepted in order recorded by the court. You, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, each of you do say unanimously that the defendant is not guilty of the crime of manslaughter in the first degree with the firearm in violation of Section 53A, 55, paren A, paren 3, and Section 53, 55A of the Connecticut General Statutes as outlined. You, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, each of you do say unanimously that the defendant is not guilty of the crime of the lesser included offense of manslaughter in the second degree with the firearm in violation of Connecticut General Statutes 53A, 56, paren A, paren 1, and Section 53A, 56A of the Connecticut General Statutes as outlined. You, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, each of you do say unanimously that the defendant is not guilty of the lesser included offense of criminally negligent homicide in violation of Section 53A, 55 of the Connecticut General Statutes as outlined.
The Milford jury found Trooper Brian North not guilty on all counts by a Milford jury, in spite of a strong popular disapproval and conviction that he was guilty. Following 2 weeks of testimony and several days of discussion, the jury gave a verdict that ended the trial. Now, while this cop was let go easily, this next judge did something completely unexpected in the courtroom.
Before the
Don't get brazen with me.
During a night of chaos in Kenosha, sparked by the police killing of 29-year-old black man Jacob Blake, who was left paralyzed after an altercation with a cop, Rittenhouse armed himself with an AR-15 style gun. As things got quickly out of hand, Rittenhouse opened fire, killing 36-year-old Joseph Rosenbaum and 26-year-old Anthony Hubert, in addition to wounding 26-year-old Gage Grosskreutz.
You indicated that at no time did this gun, this AR-15, ever leave the state of Wisconsin. Is that right?
Other than the night after, other than that.
Before the shootings?
Correct.
There was a time, though, where you wanted to have it with you down in Illinois, isn't it? It wasn't there?
I believe there was a time when me and Dominic were mad at each other. Yeah.
You were mad at Dominic?
Me and Dominic were mad over something.
And you wanted to have the gun with you down there?
I think I said something along those lines.
You'd agree with me that... Let me back up for a second here. You have testified to this jury that you used deadly force against Joseph Rosenbaum, Anthony Huber, the man who attempted to kick you in the face, and Gage Grosskreutz on the night of August 25th, correct?
Yes.
And you did that because you felt that your life was in danger from those 4 people, correct?
Yes.
And you are telling this jury that it was, in your mind, justified to use deadly force to protect your own life, correct?
Yes.
Many of the most contentious topics of the country are addressed in this case, such as vigilantism, self-defense, the Second Amendment, violence during racial justice protests, and the different perceptions of how the legal system and law enforcement handle white people and people of color.
You'd agree with me that you were not allowed to use deadly force to protect that CarSource building, correct?
Well, I wasn't using deadly force to protect the property. I used deadly force to protect myself, so...
Please listen to my question and answer my question if you can. You'd agree with me that you were not allowed to use deadly force to protect that CarSource building, correct?
Yes.
You'd agree with me that you were not allowed to use deadly force to stop someone from smashing the windows of an unoccupied parked car, correct?
I don't think you could use deadly force for that.
You'd agree with me that you can't use deadly force to stop someone from lighting a metal dumpster on fire, correct?
Correct.
You'd agree with me that you can't use deadly force to stop someone from tipping over.
Correct.
You'd agree you can't use deadly force to stop someone from lighting a flatbed trailer on fire, correct?
Correct.
You'd agree with me that you can't use deadly force to stop someone who is about to start an unoccupied car on fire, correct?
Prosecutor Thomas Binger was accused by lead defense lawyer Mark Richards of disobeying earlier decisions and trying to provoke a mistrial. However, tensions in the courtroom increased as Binger replied and prompted an unexpected response from the judge.
Mr. Richards? Your Honor, Mr. Binger is either forgetting court's rulings or attempting to provoke a mistrial in this matter. He knows he can't go into this, and he's asking the questions. I asked the court to strongly admonish him, and the next time it happens, I'll be asking for a mistrial with prejudice. He's an experienced...
First of all, Your Honor, this was the subject of a motion. I'm well aware of that, and the court left the door open.
For me, not for you.
My understanding of
You should have come and asked for reconsideration. You did on the one motion, and in fact, I granted your motion for reconsideration.
That was not our motion.
Excuse me. I did. I granted.
We did not move
that
to
was
reconsider.
their motion.
We have not filed any
me.
motions to reconsider in this case.
That was their motion for reconsideration, which I denied. But I said I denied it, or I indicated a bias towards denial is what I did.
When prosecutor Thomas Binger implied that the court had allowed for specific lines of interrogation, including those he pursued with the defender, the judge dismissed the jury and became enraged.
Why would you think that that made it okay for you, without any advance notice, to bring this matter before the jury? I was astonished when you began your examination by commenting on the defendant's post-arrest silence. That's basic law. It's been basic law in this country for 40 years, 50 years. I have no idea why you would do something like that. And it gives, well, I'll leave it at that. So I don't know what you're up to.
May I respond?
Yes.
We filed an other acts motion on this exact issue because, in my mind, and I argued this, it is identical to what was going on the night of August 25th, in the sense that the defendant was using this exact same weapon. He was using it in a manner to try and protect property.
No, he wasn't.
Your Honor, with all due respect...
I'm not going to rehash the motion. Yeah, that's absolutely untrue. No. Your argument's of record. My comments are of record, and why I ruled as I did is of record. There's nothing that I heard in this trial to suggest anything's changed, even if you're correct in your assumption that you know more than I did at the time.
What came next was extensive verbal attacks aimed directly at the prosecutor. According to the report, the prosecutor's strategies in the past have contributed to worsening these serious issues in high-profile cases.
May I finish, please? I'd like to have a chance to make a record if I could, without being interrupted, if that's okay. He has mentioned that he's acknowledged that he's used this gun to protect property. He's also just acknowledged that he knows he can't do that. I am attempting to impeach him now with the prior August 10th incident, 15 days prior, involving the same gun, where he is threatening to use that gun to protect property. It goes...
He has the gun with him.
Your Honor, he is saying he wished he did so he could shoot people.
You know, there's a lot of difference between commenting about something when you haven't got a gun and threatening someone when you do.
You know, it's interesting, Your Honor, because the entire defense theory in this case is Joseph Rosenbaum, who was unarmed.
I want you to tell me what the defense theory of the case is. May I
respond to what you just said, Your Honor? I'd like to respond to what you just said. I apologize, Madam Court Reporter, but I'd like to try and make a record without anyone interrupting me, if that's okay.
Binger, however, kept his cool and claimed that he had filed an other acts petition to provide evidence indicating that Rittenhouse said that he wanted to use his weapon to protect property rather than people.
I've admitted that kind of evidence in other trials when it's been appropriate. I didn't admit it in this case because, to me, what I've heard in this trial, and by the way, Mr. Richards absolutely correctly points out that just hours ago, I said I had heard nothing in this trial to change any of my rulings. So why?
Testimony, Your Honor.
Pardon me?
That was before the defense testimony.
Don't get brazen with me. You knew very well. You know very well that an attorney can't go into these types of areas when the judge has already ruled without asking outside the presence of the jury to do so. So don't give me that. That's number one. Number two, this is propensity evidence. I said at the time that I made my ruling, and I'll repeat again now for you, I see no similarity between talking about wishing you had your AR gun, which you don't have, so that you could fire rounds at these thought to be shoplifters, and the incidents in these cases, which are not... There's nothing in your case that suggests the defendant was lying in wait to shoot at somebody.
Judge Schroeder lost his cool with the prosecutor, but in doing so, he mischaracterized the case and was not corrected. The prosecution said that Rittenhouse was the one who started the altercation and provoked the people he shot.
When you were I said you were over the line, close to or over the line on commenting on the defendant's pretrial silence, which is a well-known rule. I'm astonished that would have been an issue. So I don't want to have another issue as long as this case continues. Is that clear?
It is.
Thank you. Ask the jury to come back in, please.
However, Rittenhouse faced numerous charges that included first-degree reckless homicide, use of a dangerous weapon, first-degree endangering safety, first-degree intentional homicide, possession of a dangerous weapon, and first-degree recklessly endangering safety. Next, we have a cop who faces the truth of his actions in front of a judge, with an outcome he never expected.
When you're at the Border Patrol checkpoint, your duties are to enforce immigration laws and look for terrorists and look for weapons of mass destruction and assist in detecting narcotics. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And when you do this, of course, you're following a procedure manual that tells you what to do?
Following policy, sir.
Written policy?
Yes, sir.
You have a copy of the written policy?
No, I do not, sir.
Have you ever seen a copy of that written policy?
That states our authority to conduct immigration checks, or for the checkpoint itself, sir?
For that checkpoint?
No, I have not, sir.
Are you aware of any written guidelines or policies or procedures on how to run that checkpoint?
I am aware that they're out there, sir.
You're aware that they're out there?
The agent had illegally detained a U.S. citizen at the border checkpoint without any legal cause. The attorney didn't take long to ask him crucial questions about his job, and the officer started to have serious trouble with the question.
To get this straight, you're testifying right now that you are aware that there are written guidelines and procedures for this checkpoint?
Can you state that question again, sir?
Is it your testimony here and now that there are written guidelines and procedures for this checkpoint?
To my knowledge, yes, sir.
Have you seen them?
No, I have not, sir.
But to your knowledge, they exist?
Yes, sir.
The officer's story fell apart when the attorney exposed his hypocrisy in front of the entire courtroom. He was about to play a call recording where, shockingly, the officer made a completely different claim.
Do you recall on June 1st of this year giving a telephonic statement to Mr. Victor?
I do not recall the exact date, but yes, I do recall a telephonic interview, sir.
Do you recall you were in a room with Mr. Katz?
Yes, sir.
I believe there was another attorney in the room who was a representative of the Border Patrol Union?
Yes, sir.
And you were on the telephone to Mr. Victor?
Yes, sir.
And you're aware that that tape recording was being recorded?
Yes, sir.
And were you trying to tell the truth at that time?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember being asked during that statement if you were aware of any written guidelines, policies, and procedures for this checkpoint?
Do I remember that specific question, sir?
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
Do you remember saying that you were not aware of any written guidelines, policies, or procedures?
No, sir.
Would it help to refresh your memory if you heard a tape playing of your voice?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, if I may.
If you want to use that one, it's fine.
It starts right at the beginning of that.
This thing needs to.
However, just as the attorney was about to play the recording that would have exposed the officer, the state's attorney started questioning whether it should be allowed.
This is your voice, and if you remember being asked this question and given this answer.
And Your Honor, the state's going to object at this point. Was this noticed as part of your trial exhibit and disclosure?
Actually, Judge, this doesn't need to be noticed because it's impeachment, which is exactly how we're using it right now.
Your Honor, the same standard would apply to both parties. The state would expect that everything that be given in notice to both parties.
Judge, the law's well settled in Arizona. If the defense had to give impeachment to the state of the state's witnesses before the state's witnesses testified, it wouldn't be much of impeachment, would it? We're simply disclosing the audio tape of the interview that the state's witness, where the state's counsel was present throughout the entire interview.
Your Honor,
I have no understanding what possibly could be the objection to this.
Your Honor, may I have a moment? Your Honor, Mr. Victor is quite correct under Rule 613B. The state withdraws its objection.
Once again, the state's attorney's objection was withdrawn quickly, asserting that the defense was within its rights to play the audio.
How the operation of that particular checkpoint is to be conducted?
No, to my knowledge, no. I'm there to determine citizenship, sir. If somebody's traveling through there, say, some sort of checkpoint, they're U.S. citizens, they're free to go. If they're not a U.S. citizen, they say they are not.
Agent Gomez, did you recognize that as your voice?
Yes, sir.
Were you asked the question if there were any policies, procedures, or written policies, procedures, or guidelines for that checkpoint?
Yes, sir.
What was your answer that you were not aware of any?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
The Border Patrol agent was caught lying in court, and his expression said it all. He knew he was in big trouble, and this was just the start, as the attorney was ready to dig even deeper.
Have your testimony correct that when people pull up and you ask them if you're a U.S. citizen and whether they answer yes or no, then they're on their way?
Yes, sir.
So if someone pulls up and you say, are you a U.S. citizen, and they say no, they're on their way?
No, sir.
Well, which is it? You just said if they say yes or no, they're on their way. But then I asked you, you've said, I asked the question a different way. If they said no and you said they're not on their way, which one is it?
Usually if somebody says no, they already have their immigration documents with them. They present that to me and they're on their way.
You've got to admire how the attorney crafted his questions, making it tough for the corrupt Border Patrol agent. The clueless officer couldn't even stick to his story and was instantly outmatched.
I originally asked if you are unable to determine citizenship at the primary checkpoint, that you usually try to get them to secondary.
Yes, sir.
I did not say always try to get them to secondary. Do you understand my question?
Yes, sir.
Usually means sometimes not, doesn't it?
Yes, sir.
So is it fair to say that sometimes, if you are unable to determine citizenship at the primary checkpoint, that you let them go anyway?
No, sir.
I don't understand again. If someone comes up and you cannot determine citizenship, you say you usually try to get them to secondary. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Usually means not always. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Like, I usually wear a suit to court, but not always. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
So there are some times that people come up and you are unable to determine citizenship, but you just let them go on their way. Is that correct?
No, sir.
And what do you do with them?
I try to establish the citizenship there.
And suppose you can't.
And they go to secondary, sir.
So if you are unable to determine citizenship, they always go to secondary.
Yes, sir.
Not usually, but always now.
Yes, sir.
By now, the officer had been proven wrong twice in court. Finally, the attorney shifted focus to his client, and that is when he completely tore the officer apart, exposing his true nature for everyone to see.
Mr. Anderson was sent to secondary inspection because of the dog alert. Is that correct?
It was a combination of both immigration and the canine alert, sir.
Okay. So you're saying part of the reason he was sent to secondary was immigration, not the dog alert?
Yes, sir.
But wasn't the decision made to send him to secondary, wasn't that decision made before he ever got to you?
Yes, sir.
And the decision was made, or you got the signal from Agent Spoonamore?
Correct.
Before any immigration question was asked?
Correct.
And Agent Spoonamore gave you that signal because his dog alerted?
Correct.
So the dog decided to send him to secondary?
Correct.
How does the dog determine immigration status?
The canine does not determine citizenship, sir.
So he wasn't sent to secondary for immigration. He was sent to secondary because the dog alerted.
Mr. Anderson never answered my immigration question.
But the decision that he was going to secondary had already been made, correct?
Correct.
He could have pulled up to that primary checkpoint with a passport in his hand, and he was still going to secondary. Is that correct?
Correct.
The attorney brilliantly exposed the Border Patrol agent and his deep-seated disdain for citizens. Shortly after, he made another powerful point, leaving the agent utterly speechless.
Is there any better documentation of U.S. citizenship than a U.S. passport?
No, sir.
So it didn't matter what he said, he was going to secondary?
Yes, sir.
Because the dog said so?
Because the canine alerted to his vehicle, sir.
Is a canine trained to alert to people here illegally?
No, sir.
So the dog wasn't alerting for immigration?
In the end, the lawyer proved the stop was illegal and the Border Patrol agent could do nothing but accept his mistake and pay a hefty fine. This officer was owned pretty badly, but this next cop was given the ultimate sentence for the hideous crime he committed.
The court commits you to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 270 months.
Derek Chauvin was caught and charged for the tragic death of George Floyd on May 25, 2020, an event that sparked worldwide protests and the famous BLM movement. Deserved a thorough and detailed court process, which, well, went through until the judge reached his sentence.
I wanted to thank everybody for being here and for providing the input you did. Not just the people who were in the courtroom here, but also those who provided written statements both from the Floyd family and the defendant's family. I've read all the impact statements that were submitted earlier and listened carefully to all the input here today, and it is truly appreciated that you took the time to stay with this case and to provide me with input. I have reviewed the pre-sentence investigation and carefully considered all the facts of the case and the law, but my comments are actually going to be very brief. Most of it's going to be in writing. I have a 22-page memorandum that is going to be attached to the sentencing order. And why am I doing it in writing? To emphasize the fact that determining the appropriate sentence in any case, and in this case, is a legal analysis. It's applying the rule of law to the facts of an individual and specific case. And that is why, as opposed to trying to being profound here on the record, I prefer that you read the legal analysis that explains how I determined the sentence in this case.
Despite the immense pressure mounted on the jury, the judge made sure to tell everyone that the sentence was not based on emotions and law was followed throughout the proceeding.
What the case is, or what the sentence is not based on, is emotion or sympathy. But at the same time, I want to acknowledge the deep and tremendous pain that all the families are feeling, especially the Floyd family. You have our sympathies. And I acknowledge and hear the pain that you are feeling. I acknowledge the pain not only of those in this courtroom, but the Floyd family who are outside this courtroom and other members of the community. It has been painful throughout Hennepin County, throughout the state of Minnesota, and even the country. But most importantly, we need to recognize the pain of the Floyd family. I'm not going to attempt to be profound or clever, because it's not the appropriate time. I'm not basing my sentence also on public opinion. I'm not basing it on any attempt to send any messages. A trial court judge, the job of a trial court judge is to apply the law to specific facts and to deal with individual cases.
Finally, after giving a short speech, the judge announced the sentence for the former Minneapolis police officer.
Mr. Chauvin, as to count one, based on the verdict of the jury finding you guilty of unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony under Minnesota Statute 609.19 subdivision 2 paren 1, it is the judgment of the court that you now stand convicted of that offense. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute section 609.04, counts 2 and 3 will remain unadjudicated as they are lesser offenses of count 1. As sentence for count 1, the court commits you to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 270 months. That's 270. That is a 10-year addition to the presumptive sentence of 150 months. This is based on your abuse of a position of trust and authority, and also the particular cruelty shown to George Floyd. You are granted credit for 199 days already served. Pay the mandatory surcharge of $78 to be paid from prison wages. You're prohibited from possessing firearms, ammunition, or explosives for the remainder of your life. Provide a DNA sample as required by law. Register as a predatory offender as required by law. And then you will receive a copy of the order and also the attached memorandum explaining the court's analysis.
If this needs to be said, we just ask that it be executed forthwith.
Defendant is remanded to the custody of the sheriff to be transported back to the DOC or whichever custody is currently holding him. Anything for the defense? All right, thank you. We are adjourned.
Chauvin was sentenced to 22.5 years in prison and was later sent to the Oaks Park Heights prison. However, this isn't the last time a cop was sentenced in court, as this time the judge decided to unload on the officer.
Despite your efforts at the time to appear emotional and sad and distraught, It's clear to me that you're a remorseless killer.
Former Idaho police officer Daniel Howard was arrested in 2023 for connections to the murder of his wife that occurred in 2021. The officer pled not guilty, and as the case proceeded to trial, it did not take long for the jury to reach a verdict.
Is the defendant Daniel C. Howard guilty or not guilty of domestic battery? Guilty. Count 2. Is the defendant Daniel C. Howard guilty or not guilty of murder in the first degree? Not guilty. Is the defendant Daniel Howard guilty or not guilty of second degree murder? Guilty.
Counsel, I'm proposing a sentencing date of May 23rd at 1:30 p.m. That's available. I will order a PSI or a pre-sentence investigation. Mr. Howard, I'll have you talk with your attorney about that. You have the right to participate or not participate in that. You continue to have the right to remain silent. All right, Mr. Howard is remanded into custody. I'll see everyone back May 23rd at 1:30 for sentencing. Thank you. We will be in recess.
Howard was found guilty of domestic battery and second-degree murder. As if the case wasn't brutal enough, the judge was deeply disturbed by the cop's complete lack of remorse over 2 years, as he continued to insist on his innocence throughout the trial.
I struggle with guilt, and I struggle with not knowing. I wish I could have convinced her to stay with me instead of going home that night. The fear on her face and in her voice when she told me about how she woke up with him standing over her will never leave me. Nothing will fill the hole he has created. Nothing can fix or undo what he has done. But her name can be free. The thought that he can no longer have control over her name, her memory, and her spirit gives me a sense of peace.
I'm not that monster, I assure you. That people portray me to be.
Despite Howard's claims that he was not involved in the murder, the judge decided against it and announced his sentence. However, before doing that, he had some important words for the dangerous creep.
But what we know, beyond a reasonable doubt, is that you strangled your wife, you murdered her, and then you staged her naked body in the bathtub, shot her through the mouth, and tried to pass this off as a suicide. That's proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And, you know, often in horrible crimes like this, everybody wants to know why. And often we don't know why. And I can't get inside your brain, but the pretty clear evidence, I agree with the state, is that this was due to, you know, jealousy, greed, pride, anger, revenge, some combination of that. And because of that, you killed your wife. And you killed in a brutal manner.
Howard not only committed the murder, but staged it to look like a suicide. It is chilling how someone could be so cruel and completely out of line. Hard to believe this guy was ever a police officer.
You didn't just, when you killed Kendi, you didn't just kill your wife. You killed a mother, you killed a grandmother, you killed a sister, you killed a daughter, you killed a coworker, you killed somebody who brought a lot of life and light to those around her and those she touched. And you snuffed that out because of your own pride, greed, and anger. Despite your efforts at the time to appear emotional and sad and distraught, it's clear to me that you're a remorseless killer. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that lightly at all because we don't like to think that anybody would be like that. The remorse, the lack of remorse, the lack of caring, and just the callous disregard that you had for Kendi and how her death affected those around her. And that you had these same thoughts. You were talking about allowing people to live through your own self-control and restraint. understanding why people would kill their, quote, old ladies and go to prison. And so you're 58 years old. I don't see a lot of rehabilitation, sadly, in your future. Maybe, I mean, perhaps, but that's not a significant mitigating factor in sentencing you.
Howard appeared calm throughout the trial and even during the sentencing as he listened to the judge's plea with a straight face, as if he didn't care what was about to happen to him.
The public needs to know that there is a severe punishment for murder of your wife, and there's no sort of mitigation because the marriage is on the rocks or the wife was unfaithful or things like that. There's absolutely no justification here for your wife, and I think it's important that the sentence sends that message as well. But what I know beyond a reasonable doubt is that you asphyxiated your wife, you murdered her, you staged her body to be found as if it were suicide. It's an outrageously egregious murder. And of course, all murder is, but this is particularly heinous in my view, having sat through the trial and seen all the evidence.
As you can see, the judge had no sympathy for the former cop, and his feelings were reflected in the sentence that he had passed down.
The gravity of the offense standing alone is sufficient to justify a fixed life sentence, and that is what I'm going to impose here. I think Kendi's family deserves to have that closure. The crime is so egregious that I don't think you should be released at any point in the future. And I don't impose that lightly. I have thought long and hard about this, considered all the evidence, considered aggravation and mitigation. There's just so little mitigation here. There's just really none. And so I do find that a fixed life sentence is appropriate for the count of murder in the second degree. On the domestic violence charge, I'll impose 10-year sentence and run it concurrent. I didn't even speak about that. I mean, really, I'm not, I don't mean to give that charge short shrift. The jury found that you were violent and abusive to your wife as well.
Howard was sentenced to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. It is good to know that a psycho like him would be spending the rest of his life behind bars. And finally, a cop who thought he could manipulate his way out of punishment faces the court, and the result is instant.
Officer Michael Wagner had arrested defendant Lisette Gonzalez for a DU1. However, during court proceeding, it was revealed that he never administered a breathalyzer test, yet falsely recorded that she tested above the legal limit. When the judge learned of this, he responded in a way that had not been seen in courts before.
I want to be enlightened.
It was a mistake, admittedly, by Michael Wagner.
I know.
He testified to that today.
He caused her to have her driver's license suspended for at least a few months for nothing. So are you going to null process that case, or am I going to get mad at you today?
Perhaps you can get mad at me, Your Honor, but at this point...
Why wouldn't you... Wait a minute. Did you hear the uncontroverted testimony of this officer?
Your Honor.
Then I want you taking him up on perjury.
Your Honor.
Will you take him up for perjury?
He admitted it was a mistake, Your Honor.
No, but he lied. He lied on a sworn
Absolutely
citation.
not, Your Honor, and that is not true.
I'm dismissing. I'm dismissing. I am dismissing this charge. No, I'm dismissing the charge.
This action visibly angered the judge, and he would not stop here as he went on to grant more favors to the defendant.
This whole case was fishy, and I have no idea how they... You know what?
Address on file.
You know what?
The state intends to amend
I'm
the
granting.
charge and proceed on
I'm rescinding the sentence. I'm granting the JOA.
You don't agree with the state's decision on
I'm granting the JOA in fairness.
in fairness, because you don't like the state's decision today, Your Honor, on the case?
No, you're not. Now that I consider what Officer Wagner testified to and how many times he basically tripped over himself just to arrest this lady with no real probable cause. You're done. Motion to JOA is granted.
And you're not going to provide a written order on that?
Nope. You want to appeal me? Appeal me.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The case should have never been made. Never.
Thank you for letting us know that, Your Honor.
The judge not only reversed his decision, but acquitted the defendant on the spot, leaving the arresting officer and his attorney in dismay. Well, sometimes police officers do the unthinkable in courtrooms, costing their cities thousands of dollars. In a September 2012 hearing of an assault case, Judge Doris Bird laid out punishment for an assault like Anthony Waller when a police officer decided to take matters into his own hands.
Investigation for false imprisonment, assault in the third degree, assault as a Class 2 felony, and a misdemeanor charge as well in possession of drug paraphernalia.
I'd like to object first. If I'm under investigation, I thought the investigation came first, then the rest came. Hey, hold on, man.
Get on your feet. Don't turn on me. Get on your feet.
Waller was only talking to the judge when Deputy Brady Lovingier slammed him to the ground before taking him away. The suspect later claimed that he suffered broken teeth and head wounds. As a result, the deputy was suspended by the sheriff's office and ultimately resigned. On the other hand, Mr. Waller ended up getting $50,000 in damages from a federal jury. This officer lost his job for this. But what happened to this next bully in court will leave you all satisfied.
5 individuals claimed that this defendant tased them when they were not consenting to it, when they were not looking.
January 2023, Behar County Deputy Andrew Garcia was arrested for using his taser on cadets in training. Garcia was charged with 2 counts of official oppression, assault with bodily injury, and harassment. He pled guilty to the charges as Judge Boyd proceeded with the case.
You entered a plea to count 4, tampering with the government record. You entered a plea of guilty. The state waives counts 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7. According to the plea bargaining agreement, punishment is to be assessed at 1 year in the state jail facility. The state recommends community supervision. They're opposing your application for deferred adjudication. Have both parties had a chance to review the PSI report, state?
Yes, Judge. We have.
Defense?
Yes, Your Honor. In fact, I've gone over my client and given him a chance to read at his own pace.
It was Deputy Chavez.
No. Not in training, because you were not tasing people in training. I know that sometimes, and I don't know if it's still the case, I think it's not the case, they would tase officers in training so they would know this is the voltage of the taser, this is how it feels.
The state attorney explained what Deputy Garcia had actually done. The revelations will surely leave you in shock and dismay.
Yes, Judge. So this defendant took advantage of people who he was supposed to be supervising and training in the Bexar County Jail. He was the CERT deputy in charge of cadets and lockdown units with violent offenders, people with ag assaults, murder charges pending. At least 5 individuals claimed that this defendant tased them when they were not consenting to it, when they were not looking, and that he did it in front of inmates, which jeopardizes the security of the jail and also does not help with the retention issues that the jail is having as well. At least 2 of the victims left after that they were tased because they didn't want to be part of that work environment. Some of them were tased on the arms, legs, back, stomach. Multiple people said they did not want to be tased. He did it anyways. There's evidence that after he tased them and that the victims would ask him, "Why'd you do that?" He would look at them and smile. Some of the people consented to being tased. However, it was under a type of duress. For example, one of the victims went to him asking for clippers so that they could cut the inmate's hair in another unit. And he said, "I'll give them to you if you let me tase you."
It's bizarre to hear that a law enforcement officer was being a straight-up bully and was harassing his juniors who were there for training. However, the events keep on getting worse.
In the PSI, I noticed that he said that he had been tased before. There's evidence that was uncovered throughout the investigation that he would, when the victims would say, "Hey man, why'd you do that to me? Have you ever been tased?" He would respond back with, "No, and I'm not going to let anyone tase me." So I don't know which part of that is actually true. Judge, I just want to make it very clear that when these reports come out and when all this stuff is happening, they don't say Andrew Garcia was tasing people in the jail. They say a Bexar County Sheriff's deputy was tasing people. He's besmirched the badge of the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. This is supposed to be a controlled environment, and he added chaos to an already chaotic environment. By doing this in front of the inmates, it put not only him in jeopardy and the cadets, but also the other inmates. And it is his sole job in the jail to maintain the health and safety of the inmates who are there. When he was confronted about it, he put on a government record that he does not recall this ever happening. However, in the PSI, he says the reason he did it is because it was done to him. You know, the old saying, if all your friends jump off of a bridge, are you gonna do it too? And here it seems like he just went along with it and was tasing all these cadets.
The poor cadet who was multiple times spoke to investigators, or else this unlawful practice might have continued even longer.
The defendant is 6'10", 245 pounds, at least at the time when he was working there. One of the victims is 5'2" and 112 pounds. And he reported that he was held up against the wall physically, and that this defendant would not set him down, that he would put him into an arm bar in front of other inmates and tase him multiple times in front of other inmates. This was not a one-off time, Judge. If it was, I don't think the state would be having such an issue with the bird. It's the fact that we found out that this happened to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 individuals. And the one individual he didn't tase, he would harass. So when he would go to start doing his checks on the inmates, this defendant would point the red dot at him, come up behind him and clack the taser while the cadet was just trying to do his job. Therefore, the state thinks that this defendant should carry a conviction because of the egregiousness and because he has besmirched the badge of the Bexar County Sheriff's Office.
Defense.
It seemed the bully enjoyed harassing and attacking those innocent young cadets. Shortly after, his attorney had the floor, and the corrupt deputy tried his best to play the victim card.
What you're accused of by tasing and harassing these cadets is not a proper work environment or training environment for them?
100%.
Okay. Have you learned from this not to do something like that?
100%, yes.
Okay. Were you ever tased? Yes or no?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And is it part of training that everybody's going to get tased sooner or later? Normally a time when they get tased.
At a time and a place, yes.
Okay. And did you notice anything from the inmates reacting to your alleged misconduct?
I'm saying I do not recall tasing in front of inmates.
Okay. All right. So, and this is your first offense,
yes, sir.
Correct?
Okay. Excuse me. Norma.
This is a first-time offender. I do understand what I did was, wrong. I would not do it again. It was a mistake. I'm about to get married here in the next couple of weeks. I asked for, if you could on deferred, I would greatly appreciate it. I have done my lesson, Your Honor. And I would never, ever do anything like this again.
Okay. Any questions?
Any questions from the state?
Just a few questions. So your attorney asked you, you know that that's not a proper work environment, stuff to do with the work environment, correct? But you understand this is more than just some type of workplace harassment, that was criminal conduct you were doing?
Yes.
Where you were housing people who have allegedly committed crimes?
Correct.
So in fact, you were committing crimes in the jail?
Correct.
No further questions, Judge.
Nothing else, John.
All right.
After the defense and state presented their arguments, Judge Boyd took charge and announced the sentence. But before that, she took this bully to the cleaners.
We are actually going to marriage license to pick up the proper documents, and then whenever, I guess, they have their scheduling, we'll pick a date, but as soon as possible.
All right. The state is asking for you to have a conviction. If this were counts 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7, I would probably have no question about giving you a conviction. But however, you do need to be punished. And punished is not just permanent surrender of your TCO license. So I'm going to give you a choice. I will give you 4 years deferred adjudication. With that, you're going into custody to the Bexar County Jail for 30 days. That's your punishment. Or I will give you a conviction. Which do you choose?
And the conviction went, are you just giving regular probation? Is that what you're saying,
Yes.
Your Honor?
Deputy Garcia was a lying coward. The only reason he didn't want to go to the same jail he worked at was because he couldn't face the cadets he was bullying for fun.
Only one that works with my family. My wife is focusing on her degree. And it's, I don't want to be in jail, Your Honor.
Well, the people you tased, they just wanted to, I'm assuming they were there to support their families as well. So why were you tasing people? And I don't want to hear, because how old are you?
24.
24. I don't want to hear this is like college and people are hazing people. I never understood why people who had been hazed decide to haze other people. So why were you tasing people at the jail who are just there? And I know those cadets are young because I've seen some of them. They're 18. Some of them look as though they're 12. So why were you tasing cadets?
Your Honor, doesn't make it right. It's a thing that's going around.
Oh, you're saying there are other cadets there are other people at the name.
Deputy Garcia tried to cover up by claiming it was a long-standing practice. The judge cut him off and went over to humble him for the next few minutes, leaving him speechless.
Who are tasing people at the jail.
Off the top of my head, Your Honor, it's been a while. I don't.
No, I'm thinking, who tased you? Give me a name. I'm sure the state would like to know these names. So who are the names of the people who were tasing you?
Your Honor, I do not remember.
Of course, you always remember the first person who tased you.
The first person who tased me was in proper training.
Oh, what's their name?
That was.
All of the complainants in this case remember you as tasing them. That's why you're here. So who tased you?
In proper training, it was Deputy Chavez.
No. Not in training, because you were not tasing people in training. I know that sometimes, and I don't know if it's still the case, I think it's not the case, they would tase officers in training so they would know this is the voltage of the taser, this is how it feels. Much like in the military, when they release the gas, so you'll know how to wear your mask properly. No, I'm talking about who tased you improperly, because that's why we're here. You're saying people hazed you, so you're just hazing people. So who are these people who tased you when you were not in training?
Your Honor, I do not remember names.
All right, so who else is tasing people at the jail?
Garcia tried to dodge the question, but didn't realize he was up against a brilliant judge who wouldn't let him off so easily.
Because that's what you're telling people. You're telling me, you're telling the states, you're telling the attorney that there's tasing happening at the jail. I'm sure those cadets don't want to be tased if it's not in training. So who are these other people who are tasing cadets? We want to know. So tell me who they are. Do you need to sit in the box while you think of the names of the people?
Mr. Randall.
Any reason why are you not intentionally not remembering names, correct?
No, I cannot remember.
Oh, I mean, if you want to sit in the box and think about the names, because you can't just throw around people are being tased at the jail by other people and then that's it. Who are these people who are tasing people? There's nothing worse. Well, there may be other things that are worse than people who say, well, I heard. But you're not saying I heard.
Yes, ma'am.
You're saying, oh, now you're changing it to I heard?
I haven't seen someone get tased. I've heard of stories of people getting tased, and I just ran with that.
Oh, so he's never seen anybody tased. So now he's not just continuing the hazing that happened to him. He was just tasing people. Your unborn child, is this going to be a girl or a boy?
He's 4 months old. He's a boy, yes, ma'am.
The deputy continued making a joke of himself, left with no answers. The pathetic bully never considered his actions wrong, and the judge kept pressing on his vague excuses.
He's 4 months old. He's a boy, yes, ma'am.
4 months old. So what if he decides to be a cadet at the jail and somebody like you, who's 6'10", however much you weigh, is tasing him?
I would be unhappy with that.
Mm-hmm. How unhappy would you be?
Very unhappy. Very unhappy.
And how would you think the work environment would be for your son when they're constantly worried about some guy who's bigger than them tase them?
As a parent, I would not approve of that work environment, Your Honor.
Mm-hmm. That's what you did. Some people would call it being a bully, but that's what you did.
Yes, ma'am.
So you deserve a conviction, and I'm going to give you a conviction. Is there anything else from either party? In the state jail facility, suspended and probated for 4 years. Proof of employment within 30 days. There's to be no employment as a home health care provider or with minors. Regular reporting. Oh, and if I haven't said it before, I'm finding you guilty. There's to be regular reporting by Zoom or in person. There's to be regular UAs. There's to be the permanent surrender of your TCOL license. And I know sometimes people will give up their TCOL license, but then they go to another state and they're allowed to become officers again. So while you're on this probation, there's to be no employment as a security officer.
In my opinion, the deputy was lucky not to get a jail sentence. His punishment felt like a slap on the wrist. But the judge made sure to humble him one last time.
Court is not waiving any of those hours, and I'm going to require parenting classes. Probation, is there anything else? Is there anything else you need from the court to be successful?
Want to just give you anything, help you at all. This is your time to ask.
Sir, is there anything else you need from the court to be successful on this probation?
No, no.
All right. I'm showing you what's entitled Trial Court Certification of Defendant's Rights to Appeal. Did you review that with your attorney? Did you understand it, and did you sign it? All right, we can go off the record. I understand why you don't want to do your time at the Bexar County Jail, and you know what? I know it has to do with people in the box and security for you at the Bexar County Jail. So that heavy beating of your heart, that's the heavy beating that all of those cadets had whenever you were on shift. And you need to remember that. Do you understand?
Sure.
All right, good luck to you. Yes.
I apologize. You want field visits?
Yes, field visits once a month for 3 months. All right, just have a seat. They'll go over conditions with you. With your attorney, did you understand it, and did you sign it? All right, we can go off the record. I understand why you don't want to do your time at the Bexar County Jail, and you know what? I know it has to do with people in the box and security for you at the Bexar County Jail. So that heavy beating of your heart, that's the heavy beating that all of those cadets had whenever you were on shift. And you need to remember that. Do you understand?
Sure.
All right, good luck to you. Yes.
I apologize. You want field visits?
Yes.
Garcia was immediately fired from the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. And although he wasn't arrested, he will never get to be a law enforcement officer again, thanks to Judge Boyd. Well, this isn't the last time a judge destroyed an officer in court, as this case will leave you stunned.
At least give me the satisfaction of knowing that you're out there beating up nigga. LOL. How humiliating and degrading. Be a positive example to Officer Zelenuski.
On January 28, 2015, Inkster police officer William Mendez and his partner John pulled over a black man for a traffic violation. What followed will shock you as Judge Vonda Evans details the incident during the trial.
I'm gonna start out with Mr. Dent. The victim involved in this tragedy is a 58-year-old black man who was driving his Cadillac in Inkster, a suburb of Detroit. On the evening of January 28, 2015, where his life changed forever, he was stopped by the defendant, a then Inkster police officer, and his partner, Officer Zelenuski. Mr. Dent was stopped for a minor traffic offense and ordered out of his vehicle. With his hands extended out of his driver's window, he was grabbed out, thrown to the ground, and struck 16 times in the head by the defendant. In his attempt to arrest him, he was thrown onto a window shield of a patrol car, bleeding profusely from a head injury. The responding police officers arrived as the defendant is wrestling the defendant to the ground. Mr. Dent was struck, kicked, and tased while on the ground by what appeared to be a group of angry, anxious police officers that celebrated after the defendant was beaten and cuffed.
This horrible beating had left Dent's face and shirt drenched in blood, but the officer's reaction to this was even worse.
The video in the car shows the police officers fist bumping as a celebratory act of bravery by the defendant and his cohorts. But the one image that struck out to the court was looking at Mr. Dent in his cell, shaking his head. In disbelief of what had occurred to him. If his conduct was indicative of what he was thinking, I would have thought this: what crime did I commit? Being a black man in a Cadillac, stopped for a minor traffic offense by a group of racist police officers looking at. As Police Officer John Zelenuski, auxiliary police officer, testified in court too, in his response to a text, was quoted as saying, "At least give me the satisfaction of knowing that you're out there beating up right now. LOL." How humiliating and degrading that must have been.
After his arrest, the officers kept on humiliating, cleaned his blood off their uniforms with disinfectant. Dent was also charged with resisting arrest and the judge was devastated by the events and delivered a powerful, heartfelt lecture.
He was left in a cell for a number of hours before getting medical treatment. But after hearing the defendant and his fellow officers joke about his injuries as they were wiping blood off their uniforms with disinfectant. 2015. Please be quiet in my courtroom. How does this happen? I'm gonna tell you how it happened. Some years ago, 19 to be, well, 25 to be exact, I remember coming into this building with such enthusiasm, so excited. And I remember a lawyer telling me that nobody leaves out of this building like they came in. I didn't understand what that meant. You go to social events, you tell people what you do for a living, and after they say, what kind of cases do you hear? And as a judge, prosecution, defense, does criminal defense, a police officer, after a while they say, we don't want to know anymore. That's the job in the criminal justice system.
Racist Officer William could only sit and listen as the judge spoke. How fitting that he was being humbled by an African-American woman.
These pressures and expectations force officers who have a pure desire to purely serve the community as an occupation to conform to this group mentally or face being ostracized and labeled as an outcast among that group. These methods of indoctrination are passed along to new police recruits in the academy by stressing the importance of obedience to authority through a structure of shame and honor. It teaches them to conform and obey to the prevailing standards of the police culture. Field training, the recruit gets a reality check of what it's like to be out in the city. I was out at a mall yesterday. I asked a woman a question. I said, you don't have to answer. How much do you get paid an hour? She said, $15 with benefits. Well, guess what? That's more than what Inkster gets. They don't get benefits. The equipment, the police cars are old. We went out to the scene. Early in the morning, there were people who were using drugs. They just kind of came out And the only thing I could imagine was the only thing that is separating these people from drug are the police officers that appeared in my court.
Judge Vonda not only blasted the officer in question, but also questioned the overall system that produces such cops. On the other hand, all charges against Dent were dropped, and he settled with the city for $1.4 million.
According to Law Enforcement Today, a publication, police officers had the highest rate of alcoholism, divorce, drug abuse, suicide. Their life expectancy is 10 years less than the average American. Police are human beings too. They feel despair and they have ups and downs. Their job is made worse because they see on a daily basis, more than any other occupation, the worst behavior that people can inflict on one another. They go to work every day with the knowledge that some of the people that they are sworn to protect and serve want to kill them. But how do we as a community expect superior services from police officers who are making security guard salaries to receiving little compensation and struggling just to pay health care? We would rather save a few dollars to balance a budget than pay millions of dollars to reverse a tragedy that we could have prevented. I know that Mr. Dent would give back every dime of his $1 million settlement to go back to where he was in his life before January 28th. I wonder what would one half of that $1.4 million settlement awarded to Mr. Dent have done for the Inkster Police Department? Training officers that wanted to serve and not hiring officers that didn't belong. It's my belief that when we begin to value and properly compensate and train those that want to serve, then and only then will we as a community receive the type of services that we expect and demand from the defenders of our community, the police. It's amazing how poor cities like Flint can find millions of dollars to attempt to reverse a situation that $100 a day could and would have prevented.
Moving on, we have this insane cop who was taken to the cleaners by this vigilant judge. Officer Eric DeValcanaire and his partner responded to a call about a person chasing his girlfriend in his pickup truck. Eventually, the suspect decided to head back home, and as he was entering his driveway, Officer Eric asked him to step outside. When the suspect didn't comply and remained in the truck, DeValcanaire twice on the spot. He was charged with, and after a lengthy trial, the judge finally delivered a verdict.
Parties have a right to expect that no matter what I hear, I will only consider factors that are appropriate and that I will disregard those that are inappropriate. And that is what I've done here. And as a result, I've concluded as follows. There are a number of facts in this case that are both aggravating and mitigating, sometimes all at the same time. First and foremost is this undeniable and uncontested fact. Cameron Lamb is dead. And Eric DeValcanaire, that's undisputed. Cameron Lamb was by all accounts a helpful and loving son, brother, father, and friend. People who have contacted me and who I have heard from today have described him as funny, caring, giving. Miss Gray called him a protector, a jokester, and my favorite of all the ones that I read, not a saint, but our angel.
Judge Dale Youngs understood the entire case and lectured the corrupt cop before announcing his verdict.
Cameron Lamb's death leaves an irreparable and unfillable void in the lives of his family and his friends, and also in our community. Also, as I'm weighing all these facts, it can't be overlooked that the events of December 3rd of 2019 were initially set into motion by Cameron Lamb and his decision to chase his girlfriend through city streets at dangerously high speeds, putting motorists and other members of the public at risk. However, those events tragically concluded with the actions of Troy Schwam, and the defendant. Pulling up to defendant's house, Sergeant Schwam pulling into the driveway, immediately getting out with his weapon drawn, rapidly moving into the backyard, carport, garage area of the house, and defendant doing the same. Both without taking a breath, without pausing for the briefest of moments to consider where they were going, what they would find when they got back there, whether they were acting lawfully in doing so, and whether there might be some other safer option, without so much as a "Hey, Troy, wait." At any point, Sergeant Schwam and the defendant could have done this.
The victim, Cameron Lamb, was not even reaching for a gun when the cop shot him. The judge narrated the events as the tyrant listened in agony.
A fact that is made even more aggravating as the court considers an appropriate sentence, in this case by the fact that the one person who ultimately did take a breath that morning was Cameron Lamb. He did this when at some point, while he was chasing his girlfriend, he decided to discontinue the chase and to go home. The video from the helicopter shows this decision, shows how it played out. Cameron Lamb is not racing through the streets of his neighborhood at this point. He's not driving through yards to get away from anyone. He does not abandon the truck and let it roll into someone's yard while he flees on foot. Rather, he simply pulls into the driveway of his home, pulls around back, puts the vehicle into reverse, and slowly begins backing it down the driveway under the carport and into his garage. Then Sergeant Schwam and Eric DeValconaire arrive, and as the court has found, an encounter that was over and a situation that had de-escalated was again escalated by what I have found, rightly or wrongly, was their unlawful entry into the backyard carport area and confrontation of Cameron Lamb. This is an aggravating factor.
This sad incident stems from the fact that these corrupt cops overestimate their authority. The tyrants wandered inside his house without any warrant and ended up poor guy inside his own home.
The circumstances of the offense as described during the trial, however, also provide the court with a mitigating factor. I found, as I've considered the evidence in the case, that the defendant, Eric DeValconaire, testified credibly at trial that he was rushing to provide cover for Sergeant Schwam, who had rushed into the backyard with his weapon drawn, prompting the defendant to do the same from the other side of the house. Although not in the court's view, again, rightly or wrongly, negating his obligation to act with reasonable care, as the court found he has failed to do, his natural reaction to protect his partner is a factor for me to also consider. And let's also be clear, and it is hard to accept this distinction. I know that. Murder and involuntary manslaughter arising from criminal negligence are two different things. They are different legal concepts. They are different things.
The judge was rightly tearing apart the corrupt cop, but just as he neared his conviction, he started to gather some sympathy for the racist officer.
Eric DeValconaire is not Derek Chauvin, who murdered George Floyd. Eric DeValconaire is not one of the 3 men in Georgia convicted of running down and murdering Ahmaud Arbery. This is a mitigating factor. Defendant has no prior criminal history. His ORAS scores him as a low risk in all categories. Defendant's history as a police officer, husband and father, friend and colleague is also a mitigating factor that I have taken into account, as his father asked me to do, which I was already going to do, and that is to consider the totality of the circumstances and to consider the totality of the defendant's life. The facts and the circumstances in the history of defendant's career and his life that have been presented to this court have demonstrated he has not hesitated to immediately take action when he believed the circumstances surrounding him warranted it. And this trait has generally served him and others well. It also failed him.
It was disheartening to see the judge side with the suspect, especially since this case appeared to be a clear-cut murder, much like the ones mentioned earlier.
Cameron Lamb is dead. Eric DeValconaire killed him. And the court has found that that happened because the defendant acted without considering or being aware of the substantial and unjustifiable risks associated with his conduct, and that his actions were a gross deviation from the standard of care that a reasonable person would exercise in this situation. Having concluded, as I have, having considered all those factors, I ask counsel if there's any legal reason or cause having been shown why sentence and judgment of the court should not now be pronounced.
Time from the state.
No, sir.
Eric DeBalconaire, on count 1, the Class E felony of involuntary manslaughter in the second degree, I sentence you to a term of incarceration in the Missouri Division of Adult Institutions of 3 years. On the unclassified felony of armed criminal action, I sentence you to a term of incarceration of 6 years in the Missouri Department of Corrections.
This officer learned his lesson, but this next cop was caught planting on people and owned in the courtroom.
It appears to be an illegal narcotic. Do you know anything about that?
I do not.
What is that? I'm just trying to figure out how that stuff got in your car. You gonna go to jail today for possession of method? Oh man, dude, I'm serious, dude. Anything, what you want me to do, man?
And I knew my truck was clean. I knew it was.
Anything the vehicle need to be concerned about? Bombs, hand grenades, rocket launchers. Okay.
It is yogurt, sir.
I know. Okay.
It's yogurt.
How about this, though?
That is not mine. No, sir.
Okay.
Now, the white small plastic baggie that was in that spoon that the deputy just showed you on this video, had you ever seen that before?
No, sir.
Was that in your car?
No, sir.
The court proceeding mostly consisted of evidence as all the 12 drivers testified against Zachary. Finally, the jury reached a verdict and it was announced.
In the state of Florida versus Zachary Tyler Wester, case number 19-CF-431. We, the jury, find as follows as to the counts charged and the information. Count 1, guilty of racketeering as charged. Count 2, not guilty. Count 3, not guilty. Count 4, not guilty. Count 5, not guilty. Count 41, guilty of possession of controlled substance related to February 15, 2018, as charged. Count 42, not guilty. Count 43, not guilty. Count 44, guilty of possession of a controlled substance related to April 17, 2018, as charged. 65, guilty of false imprisonment related to Stephen Van, as charged. Count 66, not guilty. Count 67, not guilty.
All right, Mr. Clerk, if you'll go ahead and poll our jury. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time and consideration of this case. I also wish to advise you of some very special privileges enjoyed by jurors. No juror can ever be required to talk about the discussions that occurred in your jury room.
The verdict was read as all the 67 charges were read individually, and Zachary was found guilty of 19 of them, including racketeering, official misconduct, and possession of controlled substances. In a final hearing, the judge announced his sentence.
Mr. Wester, this court now sentences you as follows in this case. As to count 1, racketeering, which is a first-degree felony, you are sentenced to serve 5 years in the Florida Department of Corrections. As to count 7, official misconduct, as a third-degree felony, you are sentenced to serve 18 months in the Florida Department of Corrections. That will be served concurrent with count 1. As to count 65, false imprisonment, that's a third-degree felony, you are sentenced to serve 1 year and 1 day in the Florida Department of Corrections, consecutive to count 64. Counts 7, 9, 10, 31, 33, 34, 41, 44, 48, 64, and 65 are to be served consecutive to each other for a total sentence in this case of 12 years, 6 months, and 8 days in the Florida Department of Corrections. This sentence of 12 years, 6 months, and 8 days in the Florida Department of Corrections is to run concurrent with a 5-year Department of Corrections sentence in count 1. Therefore, it is the intention of the court that you are sentenced to serve a total of 12 years, 6 months, and 8 days in the Florida Department of Corrections. I'm also going to award the defendant 58 days jail credit as to count 1 and count 7.
The corrupt deputy was rightfully sentenced to 12.5 years in prison. Well, this officer was definitely corrupt, but the actions of this next cop were so hideous, he was given the ultimate sentence.
The court commits you to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 270 months. That's 270.
The tragic death of George Floyd at the hands of Officer Derek Chauvin on May 25, 2020, sparked a worldwide movement calling for justice and police reform. Chauvin was charged and eventually convicted of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter.
I wanted to thank everybody for being here and for providing the input you did. Not just the people who were in the courtroom here, but also those who provided written statements, both from the Floyd family and the defendant's family. I've read all the impact statements that were submitted earlier and listened carefully to all the input here today. And it is truly appreciated that you took the time to stay with this case and to provide me with input. I have reviewed the pre-sentence investigation and carefully considered all the facts of the case and the law, but my comments are actually going to be very brief. Most of it's going to be in writing. I have a 22-page memorandum that is going to be attached to the sentencing order. And why am I doing it in writing? To emphasize the fact that determining the appropriate sentence in any case, and in this case, is a legal analysis. It's applying the rule of law to the facts of an individual and specific case. And that is why, as opposed to trying to being profound here on the record, I prefer that you read the legal analysis that explains how I determined the sentence in this case.
Derek stood still and refused to show any emotions that would display guilt and remorse. The police officer knew he was about to face a long sentence.
What the case is, or what the sentence is not based on, is emotion or sympathy. But at the same time, I want to acknowledge the deep and tremendous pain that all the families are feeling, especially the Floyd family. You have our sympathies. And I acknowledge and hear the pain that you are feeling. I acknowledge the pain not only of those in this courtroom, but the Floyd family who are outside this courtroom and other members of the community. It has been painful throughout Hennepin County, throughout the state of Minnesota, and even the country. But most importantly, we need to recognize the pain of the Floyd family. I'm not going to attempt to be profound or clever, because it's not the appropriate time. I'm not basing my sentence also on public opinion. I'm not basing it on any attempt to send any messages. A trial court judge, the job of a trial court judge is to apply the law to specific facts and to deal with individual cases.
The judge made it abundantly clear that the sentence would not be based on public uproar and emotions, but would be decided strictly according to the law. That's when he announced the sentence.
Mr. Chauvin, as to count 1, based on the verdict of the jury finding you guilty of unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony under Minnesota Statute 609.19 subdivision 2 paren 1, it is the judgment of the court that you now stand convicted of that offense. Pursuant to Minnesota Statute section 609.04, counts 2 and 3 will remain unadjudicated as they are lesser offenses of count 1. As sentenced for count 1, the court commits you to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 270 months. That's 270. That is a 10-year addition to the presumptive sentence of 150 months. This is based on your abuse of a position of trust and authority, and also the particular cruelty shown to George Floyd. You are granted credit for 199 days already served. Pay the mandatory surcharge of $78 to be paid from prison wages. You're prohibited from possessing firearms, ammunition, or explosives for the remainder of your life. Provide a DNA sample as required by law. Register as a predatory offender as required by law. And then you will receive a copy of the order and also the attached memorandum explaining the court's analysis.
If this needs to be said, we just ask that it be executed forthwith.
Defendant is remanded to the custody of the sheriff to be transported back to the DOC or whichever custody is currently holding him. Anything from the defense? No, Your Honor. All right. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Well, that brings us to the end of this video. Today, we saw police officers getting owned in courtrooms after committing terrible acts while on duty. These cases serve as a powerful reminder that no one is above the law. No matter who you are, you will be held accountable if you break it.
These cases prove that even the most corrupt cops can't escape the courtroom's reach. If you found these moments of courtroom justice satisfying, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more powerful stories of justice served. And check out this next video right here.